I thought we'd actually start with my inviting Mark Pemberton, who's the Executive Director of the Association of British Orchestras, to put the orchestra situation in some context, because there was a conference in 2002, was it 3, which I didn't attend, but you did. So Mark is going to...
So yes, I'm making a very quick intervention. Part of what prompted our very keen desire to work with Kuumba on this was we in fact held a seminar on orchestras and diversity in October 2003 here at the South Bank Centre. And we analysed there some of the issues and challenges that the industry faced around being unrepresentative of the people where it was located. As we looked at the challenges of what we call the hierarchy of passing the buck, of the orchestra saying we can only take those students who are supplied to us by the conservatoires. And the conservatoires saying we can only take those students supplied to us by schools. Schools saying, well, we'd love to do more, but we haven't got enough money. We need more from government. And government saying, stop whinging, we give you tens of millions of pounds, get on and do it. So having gone from that, I cannot remotely summarise a huge seminar in 1 minute. But 3 key things came through about programming, presentation, and about education and community work, and how all of those need to be integrated and working together to embed diversity within the organisation. And we felt it was then opportune to then look at one of our key members, the LPO, who are actually resident here at the South Bank, to then talk about how they might have taken on some of the thinking that came out of that seminar and apply it within the work of the orchestra itself.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark, very much. When I came to the LPO 10 years ago, I inherited a very positive situation from my predecessor, Serge Dorney, in that of 14 directors, 6 were from outside the company, i.e. non-musicians. And at the time I started, 2 of those were BME. So we had 1/3 representation on the board. And in the staff of 30, we had 4 who you would classify as BME. One of those 4 staff members was a lady called Michelle Abbey, and she was specifically appointed to assist the orchestra in developing audiences from the BME sector. So the funding environment with the stabilisation of orchestras at the beginning of the century, and then this diversity conference that Mark has referenced, were critical points in helping us to address the issue and to change our thinking. What we had at that time was very successful schools concerts, which were free to the public, financed by Deutsche Bank for 10 years, a contribution of £1 million, in fact, so that we could give schools concerts in all key stages, including GCSE and A-level, all of which were targeted to the curriculum. Now, our target market, being resident at the South Bank Centre, is the south of London, and a lot of those areas are disadvantaged, and a lot are quite high in BME sector. So already we had, in the makeup of these schools concerts, a lot of the people we wanted to reach in a more direct way. In developing a program with Michelle, I had made it very clear that I felt we needed to find people in the BME sector who would take ownership of whatever we offered. In other words, we couldn't impose something. We needed to help people to understand that what we could offer was perhaps something they wanted or wished to take up on. And one of the interesting examples that had been brought to our attention was the success of an orchestra established in Aston in Birmingham by the Aston Performing Arts Academy. It's called the Inner City Orchestra for Birmingham now, but it apparently grew out of the response to a killing of a young black child, and just one black woman coming forward and saying, well, we need to take something positive out of this tragedy, and formed an orchestra. And then what happened was that it was developed with the help of, say, the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, helping with spaces and tuition. So it was the Conservatoire in Birmingham came to assist as well, but it had started in the community. And the fact that it's still going, and I think actually now the CVSO's pulled away altogether, the fact that it is still there, I think, is because it came from the community itself. So I think that's very important. Now, in trying to establish that community support for our programs, Michelle suggested, well, that there needed to be a community card so that these people felt that they had some visible identification with the LPO. There needed to be discounts because we recognised that their ability to pay full price was limited. But what we also found was that Michelle actually had to be the conduit to these people coming to concerts. In other words, if she organised a group of people to come to an LPO family concert on a Sunday and to bring their family, they'd come if she very actively put it together. But as soon as she pulled away from that, there was not the interest to keep coming. Now, there are two things you can take from that. One is that then you need a local from the BME sector to continue being that group liaison person. Or the other is to say, well, we've introduced people to what we offer. Perhaps they've taken the decision that they're not interested in what we have to offer. So I think we treaded very carefully on this. We wanted to encourage, but we didn't want to impose. We also decided that we wanted to, amongst the disadvantaged group, try and find those students who were talented enough to take on a musical instrument and possibly out of that group progress through to conservatoire, from which, of course, orchestras like the LPO then recruit professional musicians. In other words, if we were going to change the complexion of a professional orchestra, we could only do that if we could take students from the conservatoire. And in a sense, here we positively discriminated. We said we were looking at all disadvantaged children, but we were really searching for BME students. And in the event, we developed that program with the establishment of London Music Masters. We got it going, and then London Music Masters, through their Bridge project, with whom we are still a partner, developed that project. And it is working. We are now finding that we've got some of those students into junior conservatoire, and we can actually see a pathway developing here. Again, we found that it was very much holding hands and very much involving the parents. It's not worthwhile simply to introduce a child to a violin and expect that they're going to have an interest if it's not supported from the home environment. So again, there was much encouragement of the children coming to Royal Festival Hall. We would put on groups of these students playing in concerts before a full LPO professional concert in the evening, on the basis that their parents would come with them and they could feel comfortable at being in Royal Festival Hall, understand that this is something that they pay for through their taxes and therefore have equal access to. And again, trying to build that sort of social and community support in learning an instrument is something that they can feel comfortable with. I think here too, and referring back to what you said, we have to accept that perhaps learning a violin isn't going to be the first priority of somebody in the BME sector, and that therefore it will be a generational development thing. We can push, but we can't expect something to happen overnight, as it were. Having said that, we're very confident that we will see a change in the complexion of our orchestras in the future by being patient and being proactive in a gentle, guiding sort of way. Probably 2 decades ago, the LPO would have been, which is 100 plus players, bar 5 entirely British. Today, there are 20 odd nationalities in the orchestra. Now, they are primarily, of course, have come about through the EU, but we do have Chinese, Korean, Japanese members, and interestingly, increasingly, string players are Korean, as it happens. The other interesting thing to bear in mind, of course, is that because of the history of symphony orchestras and equal access to jobs, we've overcome that bar already of blind auditions. So in order to increase the number of women in orchestras decided to audition blind, and that obviously makes it easier for recruiting anybody of any background or any colour because of the blind audition process. Inevitably, whilst we might try and identify young children in schools who we would like to take by the hand and introduce to classical music, when it comes to appointing players, the very process, the nature of the process is going to determine that we take the very best player who is playing. In other words, we can't discriminate at that level. So whilst we can help introduce players, hopefully, into conservatoires, ultimately when they compete for an orchestra, they're competing against everyone. I just wanted to add a couple of things, and that is that insofar as repertoire is concerned, obviously the canon is very substantially white and European, but we introduced an ensemble called Renga in 2000, which was very much involved with looking at world music, fusion music with Japanese, Indian, African, Aboriginal, and so on. And we have tried to broaden the network of new work. We commissioned a symphony, for example, from Ravi Shankar, which sold very successfully to the Indian community in London, and which we've since released as a recording. And we're looking at another Indian collaboration. It's not simple, but I think we are making progress. Money is important. Having talked to you about the success of our family concerts, I also have to tell you that they're probably going to end at the end of this season because Deutsche Bank's 10 years of funding has ended, and despite all our best efforts, we can't find a replacement funder. I referred to the Renga Ensemble. Unfortunately, that all has already closed because of a cut in Arts Council funding. So money does matter, and without it, I think it does make our job moving forward much more difficult. On a positive aspect, I want to end with a clip of BME students involved with our ensemble called The Band, which is open not just to classical music instruments, but also to rap and people interested in sound technology and so on. And Animate Orchestra in Harmony in Lambeth we work with as well. To give you an example of what we think is working positively, and to say that whatever money is there or isn't there, we are committed to continuing on this pathway, quietly but with some confidence. Thank you very much.